All right, part 3. So this time, in fact, let's recap. First one, we used a material layer and a mask down here to blend, to allow the material to shine through, kind of a metal that's underneath. In the second one, we used a texture and a triplanar to map that texture on there, and we used a ramp to modify the contrast of that image. We also used a max on noise, and we combined them in a color layer, which is similar to the material layer, right? You basically have layers, and you have mask, and you within the color layer you can do blending modes on top of that. Okay, so in this last one, what we're going to do is utility node, a curvature. So the curvature kind of does what it says, right? If I just turn this on solo, let's turn on, let's go back to our view here. So the curvature node just looks at curvature, and it where there is curvature, it gives a lighter value. Where there is none, it gives a darker value. And this curvature happens to do with convex. So curves that are outward, I can change this to be concave, which would be the inward curvatures, right? Like, so these are out on the edge, these would be down in the hole. So let's just focus on the convex. The other thing too is that radius, as far as the shading that goes on there, is controlled right here. So I'm going to just leave it at 0.5, which is the default. And if we wanted to, just to see what this is, just remember that this color layer we have in the mask. But for now, let's just take this curvature and put it in there, and let's turn off the soloing. And you can see that it's wearing along the edge, right? So the metal is starting to shine through. And let's jump into the... Right, so that's starting to wear through a little bit. The next part of this is we want to create a noise to modulate how that's happening, because right now it's kind of perfect along there, right? Just curious. So there's a number of samples. If it looks a little grainy, I'm just curious if yeah. So I've just upped the number of samples so that I get a little cleaner result along there. Okay, so I'm going to create another max on noise, and I just double clicked in the screen to bring up this little window. And we'll say max on noise. And I know I'm going to use probably Luca or, oh, that's pretty good. Luca or Naki. And we're going to port that into control the radius along that edge. And you can already see that it's changing how that surface is, right? How that shading is happening. So it just adds a little bit of variation. There's some other things, and I'm debating whether or not to bring this up. I think I'm just going to leave that for now. That looks pretty good to me. As far as the wear and tear, you can see the little embossing, right, that's happening from the bump material, right? So that looks pretty good. So, but this is all working just fine and dandy. I'm going to put this one back in there, and I'm going to bring this one down, and I'm going to put it into the color layer 2, enable it, and you can see right now it's just showing the edges, but if I use add again, you can see I'm just adding white values to this, and all these are getting added together to give me one image that looks like this, right? So on the one thing that's happening on this max on noise that's causing a little bit of a problem is we originally had the radius set at 0.5, but this node here returns values between 0 and 1. Like it's like a gradient, right? Black is 0, white is 1. So there's one more node you can use, range. So I can change the range, and we want to change the float. It's not a color that we want to change, it's the float, because what we're trying to do is change the radius that defines how wide this is here. So let's do change range. Oh, and before I do that, let's go into that max on noise here and the input. And right now you can see it. It's kind of soft and rambling. The scale is 100. I'm going to make that like 15. Right? See how much more swirly this is? Let's make it even a little bit smaller. Look at 8. So you can see that the noise pattern works a lot better. That's almost too small now. Let's go back to 8. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is using this change range is I'm going to say, let's put this out color into the input, and then we'll put this into the radius. And what we want to do is say, hey, the grayscale values that will come out will give me 0 to 1, but I just want the output, I want that to get compressed from 0 to 0.5, because that was the radius that I had set up before that I really liked, right? I mean, you could make this 2 or something to expand it. Right? You can see how I now have control over that range in a different way. So let's turn this off, the solo, and you can see these little wisps that are happening, right? And it's just getting dark in certain areas. But boy, that edge is looking good. Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Okay, so let's go back to our main one camera. And let's stop our IPR. And let's try it again here. All right, we'll let this render. I've added a lot of detail, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but just see these little micro details make the surface have a history. In fact, that's the best way to say this. Adding these little details, these little images, these little nooks and crannies, make the surface have history. It's not that everything should look worn all the time. Sometimes you want a just pristine, perfect plastic surface, right? But anything, little tweaks that you make to these materials, it just makes them come alive in such a way. All right, and while this is rendering, I'm going to do one more thing. I really like how this curvature is working here. So I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to select all 3 of them, and I'm going to hold down the Command key, and I'm going to duplicate this. And let's see here. I want to put I want the weight to be visible. So I've added the weight to this. And on the curvature, instead of convex, I want this to be concave. And really what I want to do is I'm not going to carve into it. I just want it to look like there is a little more grime down in these spaces. So you can see right now, it's flipped it. It's not doing what I want because it's adding black everywhere, and I only want black here, right, in those sections. So I will add a, let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's make this black and this white. Did I do it correctly? No, I did the wrong way. This one black, this one white. Oh, I did do it correct. And then what I need to do is invert that. Invert. I could also use a ramp, so there we go. So now I've just added a little bit of grime down in these little cracks on this range. I don't know how well it will work. Let's try 5. Too big, I think. Oops, 2. Okay. So you can see you can carve away. You're really just creating these black and white value maps to turn up or off various parameters on that surface. You could take like the curvature, where's our dry planar? It's right here. So I could use a black and white image to control like the level of blurriness on this, the reflectivity on its roughness. I mean, there's just so many different things. I almost don't even want to get into it. Okay, I'm just going to call that good. And I'm going to close the node editor and just look at this final setup. So still lots of different things that you could add to this, but this surface already so much more interesting than it was before. All right, and that's part 3. I was able to put them all together. And this gives you a nice little distressed surface. Let's maybe, we'll pause that. And let's look at it from this other camera. Right, so nice little wear and tear on the surface, a lot of variation, using images, using noise, and then using utilities like the curvatureNode to create a more complex shading material. All right, hope that helps.